This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library
enough. You can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price you can get Truefire All Access for.
Now, I often, I'm sort of doing videos with different pieces of gear and sort of talking about, them in their own right. And so you might see other modelers on the channel and you might see various bits and pieces, but I think sometimes it's worth talking about and thinking about, if I could only have one of these pieces of gear, because typically I don't think most people are going to be in the situation where they even want to have multiple modelers. I think there are some, modeling nerds like me who kind of like that idea of knowing what kind of is going on in the space. But I think a lot of other people are like, which one would you actually pick? I don't need every single one. So in this video, I kind of wanted to explore some of this. I'll talk to you about what I use every day, but I'll talk to you about if it was just a choice of one physical modeler, and that's kind of the key to this, which one would I go for? In the intro, you saw me just using the Fractal FM3 there. Now, I think this unit actually packs about the most bang for buck that there is out there. I think there's maybe a contender here with the Helix LT, which actually is pretty affordable at this point now because of the new announcement and stuff like that. I don't have a Helix LT, I do have a Helix Floor. The Helix Floor I've not really chosen here for a couple of reasons. It's kind of bulky, and I think if we were to be buying one new, they're like £1,200-ish, and to me, yeah, I think I would pick the FM3 over it, although they are a somewhat similar kind of price. And if you were comparing them directly, then I think actually the Helix Floor would outpower this. But there are some other things that I think the Fractal FM3 does that mean I think I would pick it ahead of it. I did say physical stuff. What I use day in, day out is a plugin. It's Helix Native. Now, I think that is a little bit of an unsung hero of the gear world, particularly for us guitarists, where it's like, actually, I am totally happy using that, and it fits into my daily workflow incredibly well. To the point where actually the hardware stuff I don't actually use as much anymore. If there was a Fractal piece of hardware, I'd be all over that. But there isn't. Anyway, so why the Fractal? So I think the 3-foot switch thing, you probably already heard me talk about this. The way that Fractal foot switching works is that each of these buttons can more or less do a number of things simultaneously, pretty much. So in the intro there, you saw me switching between, I think, like 8 scenes, which I have on these foot switches. So a scene in Fractal world is quite a powerful thing as well. So essentially what a scene can do is turn on or off blocks. So if you had like drive pedals or delays and all that sort of stuff, you could do that within a scene. So yeah, straightforward bypass or turn it back on. The other thing that you can do is switch what type it is. So that was what was going on in that scene, is essentially the drive pedal was changing as I was going through, from like a Zen drive to 2 Zen drives at one point to a King of Tone at another point. And then on another scene, I also switched to another amp entirely. All of that whilst maintaining like seamless presets and all of that sort of stuff, which is a somewhat recent addition to the FM3. But the point being, you can be on a gig and essentially switch between these 8 scenes, and also, if you're careful with how you build your presets, into other presets as well. So it's kind of like a best of both worlds situation, where you can be in a great preset that all works, but also you can switch amps within that. So it's, although you don't have dual amping capability in there, in one preset you can have like 4 different amp channels, which could be completely different amps. So in this one I had a Fender Twin and an HRM, double HRM. Now, coming on to amps in general, I think this has been the thing which I thought at some point someone was going to catch up with this a bit. At this point now, I just think it's not going to happen, because even Quad Cortex, using the machine learning stuff that they're apparently using, the pace that they're adding amps at is just not, is nowhere near what it would need to be to start to catch up with Fractal, which at the moment is like way over 300 amps in there. So I think that for me is kind of the thing where it's like, actually, what would it take for you to have a modeler and not necessarily feel like you reached the extent of what was capable in there? For me, it's this idea that actually there's a really good, extensive, long list of amp models in here, and those are the things that take time generally for these companies to make. And I think that's the thing that Fractal is gonna, I think, continue to maintain the edge and the lead on, because no one's really got even close. I think the next closest modeler might be Helix, which has like over 100 at this point, but Fractal's got over 300. It's like really substantial. That's been the case for a while, and similarly with some of the other effect stuff, it's kind of like most of what you can think of will be in here in some form. And this is the main thing for me, which is that with most other modelers, I do feel like I pull something up, I go to play, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of what I expected. I pull up the Fractal, and each week I'm surprised by, you pull up an amp block, you pull up a cab, and you're like, something feels different here. And for long stretches, I kind of didn't necessarily think there were huge differences between some of the amp modelers and stuff like that. And definitely in an A/B comparison, I think you can definitely get these things very close. But it's definitely the case for me that people will say about the UI on the Fractal that, you know, you need to, I don't know, have a degree to use this sort of thing, or yeah. But I just feel like actually I can pull up an amp, I can pull up a cab, pull up a reverb on the Fractal, and without really changing anything, it kind of just sounds and feels right. And that is the main thing that I think would be why, if there was one piece of hardware that I could use, I think it'd be Fractal, just for that kind of thing where it's like, okay, I can pull up like Keith Urban's Twin, which is, you know, not in any other amp modeler, pull it up, something just feels immediate in the hands, or not even immediate, but there's something to the way that Fractal feels, which I think I don't get with any other modeler. So that would be, the key thing about this. Of course, the other thing is that it's infinitely editable. You can get in there, you build really complex presets, you can do things like this freezing preset that I was doing down here. The things that are negative against the Fractal stuff, I think, are the price. So it's going to be kind of expensive, but in this kind of context, I'm thinking it in mind that this is going to be the modeler that I buy, and that I don't have to feel like I'm missing out on much, of anything. The things you're missing out on are things like a touchscreen, wireless connectivity, dual amping, and capture. So profiling and capture. But I feel like you get the trade-offs in there where it's like the amp models sound so good, the amp models are so plentiful, that pretty much most amps that I could think of are going to be in there anyway, so I don't need to worry about, is there a capture of an AC30 or a capture of an AC20 or a capture of a Dumble. You know, the things are in here mostly that you're going to need, you know, ample Trainwrecks, ample Dumbles, ample Fuchs amps, ample Fenders. You know, what you can think of is generally going to be here to some extent. Likewise with effects, you know, ample spring reverbs, you know, not just 1, 2 or 3, but lots of spring reverb algorithms. And the thing that over time, they just, you know, keep getting better. So I think that for me is why, if you were to say to me, look, you've got very limited room here, you've got limited finances, is there a modeler that's out there that exists that you think, actually, I could buy that one, I could be happy for the foreseeable future? I think it would be the Fractal FM3. Not only that, you can get them used for pretty reasonable prices. People are going to say, like, no hardware at all. I'd also be totally happy using Helix native pretty much all the time. My gigging rig at the moment is an FM9, which I use just because I've got some extra foot switches. You could use, like, there's that Stephen Otter Designs thing, which has like 2 extra foot switches that go along here, or plug in an extra foot switch and get, I think, pretty close to the Fractal FM9 experience as I use it, because I use basically what I showed you, the scenes, and a couple of other foot switches for like a bit of delay or extra drive. But I also have like things like I can switch in flanger and stuff. So the FM9 is a nice addition, but you know, if I was just thinking about strictly being on a budget, the FM3, a lot of bang for buck, I think. Built like a tank. I did break mine yesterday, so this switch is now free floating, so that's a bit annoying. But yeah, fantastic unit. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and what your favourite modeler is and why. Tone Master, Quad Cortex, HX Stomp, I think is the best bang for buck thing that's, you know, affordable, but also has like really up there, you know, like probably the next best amount of stuff next to FM3. Quad Cortex, I think, is the most powerful smaller unit, and I think it still does have like a lot of things to like about it, and has the capture. So yeah, there's a lot to think about, but if I had to narrow it down, I think it'd be the FM3 personally. Let me know your thoughts.